Pop and Chips is the Super Cassette Vision's biggest game yet. Literally. It also marks the halfway point in the Super Cassette Vision's library. Released sometime around September or October of 1985, it marks the start of Epoch's big push for the Super Cassette Vision. They're trying to bulk up the library fast, and there's a huge rush of releases at this point. Perhaps the most important thing about Pop and Chips is that it's the first video game with a battery backup. It's not quite the first console for a game cartridge with a battery backup, because Nintendo beat Epoch to that with the Family Basic line. But this is the first game where you can save your work to the cartridge. It relied on two AA batteries, and unfortunately the circuit had quite a bit of a current leak to it. Those two AA batteries give you about 3 months of storage, and then would start leaking. So it's very difficult to find Pop and Chips cartridges without acid damage. In fact, mine came with 40-year-old batteries still installed. The compartment also makes the cartridge for Pop and Chips much larger than other Super Cassette Vision games. As for how the game plays, well, just looking at it, and you'd swear it was a knockoff of Hudson's Nuts and Milk. That's a puzzle platformer that was tied for being the Famicom's first third-party release. If we put them side by side, you can really see that Pop and Chips could be easily mistaken for Nuts and Milk. However, Epoch's game was made completely independently. There's no relation to Hudson's. It's just whoever made it really decided to copy the look and feel. The concept behind Pop and Chips is that all of the PP have been abducted by King Pumpkin's minions. Yes, they're called PP. Pop and Chips are two friendly people, and so they set out to rescue them. On every stage, you'll see fruit trapped in blocks, and the fruit contains the PPs. To get them out, you have to be next to that block, hold down either the left or right button, and then press in the direction of the block. Pop or Chips, whichever you're controlling, will kick that block and it'll travel until it smashes into a surface. With the fruit block smashed, the PP is released, and it starts traveling toward the top of the screen. Then it'll go all the way back to the bottom, and bounce back up again. If it reaches the spot of its original brick as it's going up, then the PP becomes entrapped in the brick again. Collecting all the PP is how you end the stage. While you're dealing with all this, you have to avoid the Bazies, the Pumpkin King's minions. And they have some very simple, but also very annoying patterns. Basically, if they're able to reach you, then they'll travel the shortest path to get to you. However, they will not jump off platforms. They have to use the ladders. If they can't get to you, then they just walk back and forth in the area that they can reach. There are 3 ways that you can deal with the Bazies. You can hit them with a block, you can push a ladder that they're standing on, since ladders can be shoved around, or you can get the salt shaker and run into them while they're still white. If you hit the Bazie with a block from the side, or use the salt shaker on them, then they bounce around the screen for a while before they're defeated, and if they hit you while bouncing, then you're killed. It might sound like they're not very complicated, but because the Bazies are so direct, and they have to be positioned just right in order for you to deal with them, it's pretty easy to get trapped by them. There's one more thing that you'll find in the movable blocks, and that's a bomb. When you hit that, it erases all of the blocks on its same horizontal level, including the brick ones which can't normally be removed. Removing all those blocks, one way or the other, could easily make it so that you can't navigate a stage, but there are 2 ways that the blocks can be restored. The first is that one of the Bazie could walk on top of the empty space where a block was, and they'll restore it. The other is that the Pumpkin King could appear. He's this giant guy, and every step he makes shakes the stage. When the stage shakes, a block comes back. It is possible to get trapped inside a block as a result of them being restored, and this is fatal. You can destroy the Pumpkin King with salt, just like any other Bazie, or by dropping a block on him. While playing on a stage, it's possible to become trapped in a way that you can't escape, and if you press the clear button on the console, then you'll just end a life. If you manage to clear 3 stages, then you'll get a bonus stage, and here PP bounce around the screen. On the bonus stage, hitting the left or right button makes Pop and Chips jump. And you'll still have to avoid the Bazies while collecting the PP until you've either gotten all of them, time runs out, or you collide with a Bazie. Pop and Chips has 30 stages, Plus, there's space on the cartridge for 10 stages that you can make. A full editor is included with the game, and your stages are saved to slots 31 through 40. Of course, you'll have to have batteries in the cartridge in order to save. In the editor, you use the right-hand button to select something and the left-hand button to delete. Kind of the opposite of how it would be implemented these days, but this was well before any kind of standardization there. There's also an additional game mode where Pop and Chips are on screen at the same time. It works much the same as the normal version, except Pop and Chips can interfere with each other really easily. At this point, it feels like Epoch is really leaning into having two-player simultaneous modes that change how the game is played. Similar to other recent Super Cassette Vision games, when you start playing, you can press Enter on the console and then punch in what stage number you want to begin at. There's no direct continue system, but that's close enough. Unbelievably, Pop and Chips got sequels. Kind of. The games Bakuretsu Senshi Warrior on the Game Boy, Oha Tsutayama-chan and Raymond on the Game Boy Color use the exact same game mechanics as Pop and Chips. I happen to be a big fan of puzzle games, and in the case of Pop and Chips, I thought it was okay-ish. My biggest problem is that a lot of levels were best handled by sitting around and waiting. There's no time limit, so I could knock out a brick, get my PP, and then wait until it had respawned and was no longer a threat to me. I didn't find the stage design to be especially puzzling, and the Bayesies movement being so simple means that there wasn't a whole lot of manipulation possible. You have the very predictable Bayesies, who you still might not be able to get out of the way of because they are so direct, and the very random Pumpkin King, who can take forever to leave a stage, and while he's there, you're probably not going to want to be kicking a lot of blocks around. And as one last issue, because of the way you can kick things, going up to collect a PP is really hard. You're almost always going to have to wait for them to take the long way around. The result is a puzzle game that's really slow-paced and not especially thoughtful. It's not the worst thing I've ever played, I just don't see myself going back to this one especially often.